Hi, this is Paul Acevedo of Windows Phone Central, here with a video review of Pac Man Museum for Xbox 360. It's a downloadable collection of classic Pac-Man games. Pac Man Museum has an attractive, if slightly clunky, interface and some cool bonus features, but before we talk about those, let's look at the games. First up is the original Pac-Man, released in arcades in 1980. Playing as Pac-Man, your goal is to eat all of the dots, avoid the ghosts, and achieve the highest score that you can. This version of the game allows you to select your starting stage from stages that you've visited before, as well as enabling a ghost of your previous playthrough. Super Pac-Man plays a lot like the original, but it also makes a number of changes. For instance, you no longer eat regular dots, instead you have to eat fruit. Also, the maze is now filled with a number of locked doors which you can open by eating keys. The color of the maze, as well as which keys correspond to which doors, changes with each level. But the biggest change of all comes from the new Super Power Pellets. Eat one and you can turn into Super Pac-Man, who can move through locked doors and even ghosts safely. By pressing a button, you can also speed up Super Pac-Man's movement. Between every few levels, you'll encounter a timed bonus round. Super Pac-Man didn't appear on home consoles until the 1990s, so although it was hard to find for many years, it's always been one of my favorites. PacMan Pal is a slightly obscure follow-up to Super Pac-Man. The mazes still feature locked doors, but now you eat cards in order to open the doors and reveal the fruits inside. Pac-Man is now accompanied by his friend Miru, who is supposedly a helpful ghost. Once you unlock a door and reveal a fruit or item, Miru will collect the item and take it back to the ghost house, at which point you can no longer collect it. You're sort of racing against Miru to collect the items, but she is helpful because each item she collects brings you closer to completing the stage. Pac and Pal introduces a catchy background song, but the most fun addition has to be the new special items you can collect. Each level has a different item, such as a Galaxian, which when eaten gives Pac-Man the ability to shoot projectiles. Pac-Man doesn't get to eat the ghosts in this game, he just stuns them in different ways, but still it's pretty fun. Pacland is an original arcade platformer inspired by the first Pac-Man cartoon series. Pac-Man can walk in either direction, run by double tapping, and jump. That's the extent of his abilities, but still there's a lot of technique to this game. Although Pacland isn't very technically impressive, it does feature some parallax scrolling, as well as an extremely catchy rendition of the Pac-Man cartoon theme. Pacland is one of my favorite games on the collection, but it does have an interesting control issue. Some levels have springboards that Pac-Man has to use to cross large chasms. Unfortunately, just jumping on the springboard isn't enough to get you across the gap. You also have to rapidly tap the direction that you're flying. Actually tapping the D-pad fast enough to get across the gaps is extremely hard because it's very unforgiving. Pac-Man returned to the maze in Pac-Mania, an isometric take on the original Pac-Man concept. Pac-Mania is actually a fairly pretty game, but the new perspective comes with one obvious drawback. You can barely see anything to the left and right of your character, making it hard to get around the maze. Pac-Man now has the ability to jump, which is pretty cool, except that in later levels some of the ghosts can also jump, making it less effective than it should be. Pac Attack is a falling block puzzle game originally released on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. The brownish blocks that fall can only be cleared by making a complete horizontal line, much like in Tetris. As for the ghosts, you'll want to group them together so that Pac-Man can eat them whenever he shows up. Pac Attack has always been confusing and unintuitive compared to other puzzle games, so I've never cared for it. Does anyone actually like this game? Pac Man Arrangement is another maze game, this time entirely in 3D. Pac-Man now moves around on a world map. Each location he visits has 5 short levels. The 5th level of these locations always contains a unique boss encounter. These get surprisingly epic. Not only is every level different in Pac Man Arrangement, but many contain unique mechanics like elevators and teleporters. On the whole, it's a great evolution of the Pac-Man concept, and easily one of the best games in Pac Man Museum. Pac Man Championship Edition was first released as a separate title on Xbox Live Arcade. Championship Edition is the only Pac-Man sequel developed by series creator Toru Iwatani. This one looks and plays a lot like the original. Only instead of playing until you run out of lives, you now select the length of time you want to play for, and then try to get the best score you can within that time. Each time you clear the dots out of one half of the maze, a fruit appears, which you can then eat, causing a new dot pattern to spawn on the other half of the maze. Once time runs out or you run out of lives, the game shows a graph indicating how well you did. Championship Edition was a fine update of the original Pac-Man style of gameplay, but the sequel, Championship Edition DX, is really a much better game. Pac Man Battle Royale is one of the most compelling reasons to get this collection because it's never been released on home systems before. Battle Royale can be played by yourself against the AI, or with up to 4 human players who can join in at any time during a match. The goal is simply to be the last Pac-Man standing, so you have to kill the other Pac-Man by either pushing them into ghosts, or collecting a power pellet and then eating them. Matches last for several rounds, the number of which can be set by the player. Battle Royale is a lot of fun, but only in short doses because it just doesn't have much content. You can't select what mazes you play in, or change very many options. Also, the visuals are inspired by the Championship Edition games, but less attractive. Still, I'm really glad that Namco has finally given us a chance to play this at home. Although Pac-Man Museum comes with 9 games by default, players can also choose to buy Miss Pac-Man for an extra $5. Miss Pac-Man is the single best-known Pac-Man sequel. It's one of several American Pac-Man games developed by Midway, but the only one that Namco Bandai chooses to recognize. Besides starring a female character, Miss Pac-Man moves at a faster pace and includes 4 different mazes, compared to the original's 1. Miss Pac-Man is a great game, but it's the only title in this collection without optional challenges, and thus doesn't contribute towards achievements. You're probably better off buying the separate Miss Pac-Man XBLA game for the same price, which does include achievements. Speaking of those optional objectives, the main games in the collection each have 8 of them. Every time you complete an objective, you get a sticker. Unfortunately, some of the objectives are really hard and require you to be an absolute master of that game, and these aren't all easy games. By earning stickers, you'll unlock 3D models of characters from the new cartoon series Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures. They'll then show up in your Pac Room, which you can browse at your leisure. Pac-Man Museum is a great game, but it does have a few problems. The main problem is you can't select display options like stretching or scan lines for the games, so they often don't take up much room on the screen. Additionally, the menus are really clunky, and you have to exit all the way out of a game in order to view its objectives, which is a hassle. Pac-Man Museum costs $20, which is kind of high for an Xbox Live Arcade game. Still, you're getting 9 great games, one of which has never been released on a home system before, and a true slice of video gaming history. Whether or not you played these games the first time they came around, you owe it to yourself to try them out. Thanks for watching. Read the full review at WPCentral.com.